Welcome to Corpse Club, the official podcast of DailyDead.com. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jonathan James, and I am joined today by Derek Anderson and Bryan Christopher, and we are together, all three of us together for the first time. We are in New Orleans. We're here for the Overlook Film Festival, and we knew we had to get together to record an episode. If Corpse Club listeners, if you listened to us last week, you know we told you we'd do it unless we ran into technical issues. If you're listening to this episode, then those technical issues did not happen, and we have made it. It's been a long few days. It's been a good few days, maybe more. I think we're on day 4 or day 5 for me, and it's my first event back since the pandemic started. I think it's been, I haven't been to a festival in nearly 3 years. And I think it's been the same for the both of you, right?
Yeah, I think I maybe went to like one local con in Seattle, but beyond that, I certainly haven't been to any festivals. So this is my first post-pandemic. Well, sorry, because we're not out. Still are since the pandemic started. This is my first festival.
Yeah, this was the first in-person festival since I want to say Popcorn Frights in 2019.
Yeah.
So, it's been a good minute.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, too, where, and you bring up a good point, Bryan, that, we're definitely not out of a pandemic, and I think part of it's trying to figure out what everybody's level of comfort is, who's, what the policies are. And so I think one of the reasons why I was really on board with going to Overlook is because they had a mask policy for, everything they were doing indoors, which is, the majority of their events. They required proof of vaccination, that you were boosted, and so this was a team that was really taking, or putting safety first, and so it made Christy and I comfortable, and then we've been testing throughout the event, and we know you guys have too. So like I said, so it felt like it was a good opportunity for us to get together.
Negative as of this morning, baby.
Yeah.
Woohoo! Excellent. Yeah, and it's good to have that peace of mind because it's such a gray area right now with everyone's handling things differently. So it's nice to have a festival that's like, okay, we're just going to take the safest route possible and make it so you can feel comfortable coming, no matter what your situation at home is like. And it's just makes it one less thing you still have to worry about it, but it's a little more peace of mind while you're watching screenings and going to immersive events, and you're coming into contact with people have been taking some precautions.
And a nice side benefit has been that, for someone who runs a furnace and is coming to New Orleans for the first time in a few years, where it has been getting up to 90 degrees and 1,000% humidity, they've been having these places at well-ventilated, air-conditioned places with a lot of space. People aren't crammed into places, so it's safe, and it's also been a lot more comfortable than it could have been if they were trying to pack us into dive bars and stuff like that. So it's been nice.
Yeah, it's been great, and I think one of the great things about Overlook Film Festival is that even though it says the Overlook Film Festival, there's also they've been known and they're famous for their immersive track. So, you have events here that you can't see anywhere else, and that's year in, year out. So we're going to talk about some of the movies we've seen, we're going to talk about some of the events that we took part in, and we'll see where everything goes. We still have a day of movies and events to go, which we're excited about. But things kicked off with Mona Lisa and the Blood Moon, so I think we'll talk about that for a minute. Anna Lily Amirpour is directing it, and it takes place, I think what's unique about this, or what kind of, worked out well for the festival, is that it was filmed in New Orleans. And so I think that was really, really to the benefit of the festival and to the film, because it's, it's like, oh, they filmed in this place I just walked past. And so I think, like I said, it was a good starter movie. It's about a young girl who breaks out of, an asylum or mental care facility. I say asylum because it doesn't look like it's, they're not taking good care of her. It seems like there's bad conditions there, and it seems like she's been forgotten about. And she breaks out, and it's about her experience when she breaks out and winds up in New Orleans, and who she meets and how they try to help or take advantage of her.
Yeah, the first thought I had when I saw this movie after watching it is it felt like a Richard Linklater kind of hangout horror movie, where Slacker or Dazed and Confused, where you're kind of following this character through all different types of environments in the city, which is like another character of itself, and it's all these interactions are different. Like some of them are positive, some of them are negative, and like you said, it kind of culminates with it kind of leads into Kate Hudson's character's life, where she uses this main character's psychic abilities to like rob people at ATM machines, and it's really interesting that to show like, you know, how does this character bring out the best or the worst in people. And so it's got a lot of interesting philosophical questions in there, kind of like a what would you do scenario. And then Craig Robinson kind of played a little bit of a different character for him, which was nice because, you know, everyone I think thinks of The Office or like these great comedy roles that he does, and he brings a little bit of that to this movie, but it's also a lot more, it's more of a serious role for him. I feel like it's a little bit against type. He's playing like a police officer who's becomes really invested in tracking down this girl who's escaped, and you can see that he's grappling kind of with his view of the world as he sees how this girl is different and how, you know, she's affecting people's lives, and it's very very interesting role for him, and I'm kind of glad that they cast him in the role like that. But it definitely has, it kind of starts off with like a Stranger Things 11 vibe and then goes in some different directions. So very interesting movie overall.
Yeah, I think the thing I would say for this, especially because, you know, not a lot of people have seen it yet, and you might not be seeing it for a little bit until it hits you know, VOD and digital and theaters. But I would say, you know, just go in, even though, you know, I'd say Overlook kind of like, you know, a number of other festivals has a wide range of films. So this isn't, even though it might be categorized in some cases as horror, it definitely, to me, is definitely more on the lighter side. It's more of a feel-good movie. You know, you leave the movie kind of having, like I said, a good feeling about things. They're more interested in the characters than they are about doing, like, you know, anything extreme with the telekinesis. I don't know what the movie's rated, but I think it easily could be PG-13. If it's R, it's just like on the verge of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they could, if they depend on if they tweak a couple scenes, or they could definitely edit a PG-13 cut. And yeah, it's interesting, this coming off of The Bad Batch several years ago, Anna Lily Amirpour, it's interesting to see her filmography and kind of what direction she's going with things. And her movies, the characters are always so interesting, because sometimes there's like no character that's all the way good or all the way bad. Like everyone's kind of flawed in their own way. And I feel like that's kind of the case here, where it's very complex, not really what you're used to seeing sometimes in a movie, where you're like, oh yeah, this is definitely the good person and this is the villain, and it's kind of like she really plays around with those concepts, and this is definitely more of that. So I think if you like The Bad Batch, and then of course A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, yeah, I see there's definitely a mix, some elements of those movies in this, but then also kind of even a little more feel good than cannibalism in The Bad Batch.
Yeah, I would agree. And then I'll just jump right to the closing night film, and then we'll cover everything in between, because I'm excited. I want to hear Brian's point of view, and I know for our listeners too, they're going to be like, what did you think of The Black Phone? And The Black Phone was the closing night film. I've been hearing about it for a little bit. You know, Heather loved it. So many people have seen it and they loved it, and it didn't disappoint at all. But we haven't heard a lot from Brian. And so, and I will say we haven't heard from Brian because he didn't see Mona Lisa and the Blood Moon, because he shook the next day.
Like, I'm not like holding back a bad review. Like it's not that I'm like holding back, like, you know, talking shit about it. It's, I had some flight shenanigans that unfortunately put me in way later than I wanted to be. So I didn't really kick things off until Friday after the opening night stuff. Yeah. So yeah, I just still haven't seen it.
Good to make sure to say something about that, because you're just over here, just silent. Like, we know why you're silent. But
people are wondering, like, is Brian just like biting his tongue, grinding his teeth? Like, no. I just haven't seen it.
Yeah, but we did all see The Black Phone. So, Brian, what did you think of the movie?
I really liked it. I'll be honest, I haven't seen a lot of Scott Derrickson's stuff besides Hellraiser Inferno, which, you know, that may not be the fairest assessment of his capabilities as a director. I know a lot of people like that one. It's not my favorite. So, like, I was interested to see where this was going to go, and I really, really liked it. it's one of those movies that is going to put you through the ringer. It puts its characters through the ringer, but it's got a very interesting resolution and a really interesting premise. You know, it's this small town in Colorado. I think it's like outside of Denver. And these kids are getting snatched by this person named the Grabber, and they're just disappearing. And people have no idea what's happening to these kids. It seems to be targeting like adolescent boys. And the main character, we're kind of following this kid. He's more of a, like, he uses his brain. He doesn't like getting very physical if he can avoid it. But he's also kind of like harangued by people at school. He's got an abusive alcoholic father. So it's kind of one of those things where, like, there's a lot going on in his life even before the Grabber shows up. But the kind of the twist of the premise is he does get caught, and he's kind of trying to figure out what the hell am I going to do. There is this black phone in the room where he's being held, and he's kind of being psychologically tortured by the Grabber, played by Ethan Hawke, who, like, this is the year of Ethan Hawke playing some, like, weird villains. Between this and Moon Knight, like, he's creeping us out this year, with especially something about that long hair he's got is adding to the whole thing. It
really is.
But while he's kind of going through that, figuring out, like, what the hell am I going to do, this black phone in the room that's not connected to anything starts ringing, and he starts talking to the people who have been abducted, and you realize very quickly that they did not meet good ends. But they start kind of helping him out and start to point him in the right direction and, like, things to avoid. You know, and I don't want to get too deep into how that all pans out. But yeah, I really like that angle and that mechanic. I'll be interested to see, because this was based off of a short story by Joe Hill. I do kind of want to go and check that out and see, you know, how much of that did they pull from the story, how much of that did they need to flesh out. But yeah, it was a really good time. I think for me, the best part of the movie was the dynamic between the main character Finn and his younger sister Gwen. They establish a really, really good rapport between them. Gwen, Madeline McGraw, the girl who plays her, is adorable. She's like this sweet, foul-mouthed little, but, like, well-meaning girl. And yeah, it's like the bond that they have that kind of carries through the movie, for me, is what anchors it. So yeah, I thought it was really effective, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I would say, you know, pretty much ditto to all of that. Yeah, I share a lot of the same thoughts. I think the only thing I would add to that is that, you know, I think that what Derrickson... Well, I think it's interesting because if you've seen Sinister, rather, there is still an element of kind of like that home movie feel that I think they incorporate this in here. And I don't want to give too much away, but I think they incorporate that a little bit so that it still feels... Not necessarily it takes place in the same world, but it comes from the same director. He's able to use that same creepiness, I should say, to work to his favor here. And I think they do it in an interesting way. And then I also, you know, applaud the team and everybody, because, right, it's like, it's editing, it's sound, it's all of it. But they're able to make this movie intense, and you're on the edge of your seat. It just doesn't let up from the very beginning, you know. I don't know what the exact runtime is. I think it comes in a little, hour 42 minutes. And it doesn't let up. So I think, you know, it's hard to keep your attention, you know. It's hard to keep your attention during a movie these days, right? Especially when there's so much else that you can jump to, whether it's a text or whether it's, you know, just playing a video game or something else. But, like, this doesn't just, you know, keep your attention. Like, you can't wait to see what happens next. And yeah, this is a really, really, really great movie. So I can't wait for everybody else to see it.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the non-linear way that they show, like, how things happen in the past and how that's influencing his communication with these dead kids now, and so telling, like, all these different stories. It's interwoven in such a way where it's so fluid, and it never feels like jumbled. It's just so fluid how they handle that. And it could have been, a movie like this, it could have been really slowed down when you're dealing with like mainly one location as the central part, but because they do that, they're able to jump around, and it never feels like you're, spending too much time in one place. It has so fast moving, and it's a really like brutal movie at times. Like I was surprised at how they just did not hold back at all when it came to violence, like even before the grabber, when we see like the home life, or just how like vicious the bullies at school could get, like in this late 70s setting. It's just everyone's like just so foul-mouthed and just mean, and it's such a like brutal world that this boy lives in even before the grabber, like you mentioned, shows up. So I really it was interesting how Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill, who co-wrote it, how they seem to have a lot of freedom in just pushing the envelope, and it never felt like exploitative. It always seemed to like factor into the story, but it was like, oh wow, they're not messing around. Like this is a pretty like gnarly world that they're living in, and that kind of also factors into how some of these kids are able to help out through the black phone communication later on. But yeah, it really was. I actually did have like a classic jump in your seat moment.
I was next to him, so I can confirm. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there was a scene that guy. There were a couple scenes there. I saw Christy did. Even I was just like, oh, but
there was a couple too where I was bracing myself. I was like starting to put my fingers in it because I'm like, I know there's like a pop out scare coming out here. And it's also funny, Derek, that you mentioned that Mona Lisa and the Blood Moon had kind of like a Richard Linklater vibe, because this for me, the Black Phone was kind of like, what if we took Dazed and Confused and made it into like a brutal horror movie?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, just that whole like setting that they set.
It takes place in the late 70s.
Yep.
You have that whole kind of vibe going, and it's focused on like the adolescents in the area. So it was an interesting take on that.
I think it would make a really good double feature with Sinister, because there are, Ethan Hawke's in both of them.
Yeah, I do. I do agree with that.
But like you said, the whole movie element, like it's very immersive. It sucks you in.
I do think
it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, but I do think it's interesting too, though, like seeing like how Scott Derrickson has grown as a filmmaker from Sinister to here, and Cargill in terms of the writing. They've just spent so much more time working together with each other, and everything just seems like a little more polished, whether it's the visual storytelling or the dialogue. I mean, for me, this is pretty much a perfect film, and I mean, obviously you could say, oh, well, there was this flaw, or they made this mistake here, but you could say that for everything, right? But I think in terms of what they were aiming for, and in terms of achieving that, I mean, I think it's a pretty expertly executed movie, and a lot of fun, if I can say that. It's intense, but it's fun. It's one I want to see again, and it's one of those too that I want to take people to. It's like I can't wait to show it to my parents, for example. They saw the trailer and they were like, we had shown the trailer because I think Heather has a quote on the trailer from her review. So they had seen it and they're like, we saw Heather's thing, but we don't want to see the movie. They're like, that's fair. But now that having seen it, I actually think this movie I think anybody could see it. And so I don't think this is like, I don't know. I don't think this is grimy. I mean, I almost think in some cases this is more like, I don't know. It's more like in a Hitchcockian direction than where Sinister is going in a different area.
I would give a couple of like content/trigger warnings, because they don't shy from showing like some domestic abuse in it. It's mainly like physical abuse. They hint at some other stuff throughout the movie, like a teeny bit, but it's mainly like this is a very physically brutal movie.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, like Derek said, they definitely don't hold back on this.
Yeah, and I'm curious too. Like, I remember Sinister was voted as one of like the scariest, if not the scariest horror movie a while back. It was some like online poll that they figured out with the algorithm or something.
I think they were actually doing heartbeat. They were doing heart monitors to see what was the scariest. But yeah, I don't think this one's gonna beat it because it works a different way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Sinister, I think Host was getting up there too.
Yep. I will be curious if if depending on how it does at the box office, like it feels like one of those movies where it's on the edge of like, if enough people and the word of mouth and everything really builds it up, I feel like it could be like a really big monster hit. Or I'm hoping that it goes in that direction and that we get more movies like this from Derrickson and Cargill, because and it's it's the summer now too, and it just feels like the perfect summer horror movie, because as dark as it is, it's very accessible.
Yeah,
like it's a weird contrast, but it feels like a lot of people, it's the kind of movie, like you said, you want to like, oh, you got to see this movie, like let's go watch. You could watch it again and still be creeped out by it and everything. So it's and then also some really creepy masks that Ethan Hawke wears that are co-created by Tom Savini. And those, it's kind of like a shout out to Ethan Hawke's Purge days, like those, like seems right out of the Purge, but even like more demonic and a very creepy element to his character that seems to be something that he like is very important to that character. So just I'll be really curious to see what the reaction is once it actually hits theaters.
Yeah, I can't wait. And it will be in theaters, in a couple weeks?
Soon, very soon.
Yeah, a couple weeks. So, so everybody who's listening, you should be seeing it soon. But I want to move on because we did quite a few other experiences, and so I do want to talk about some of our immersive experiences. I will jump to the one we can brag about, which is trivia. We did trivia. We did it in person. Trivia. Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
We I was excited. They have trivia every year at Overlook. This year, previous years have been hosted by Sam Zimmerman. This year, Ted Gagan stepped in and hosted it. And I was excited about that because I've always wanted to, experience final exam trivia in person. During the pandemic, him and Gingold, their final exam trivia, their virtual edition was like, it was saving us during the pandemic, especially during those first months where we, Fridays, it was like, right? I think it was Friday, right? It was Friday nights we would do that. And then we'd do, we'd do Eschaton on the weekends as well. It's like those virtual events was like, it was our way to like stay in touch with people. And so I had so many good experiences from that, and we got to get together. We had my wife Christy and Daily Dead team member Christy, and was there as well. So the four of us took part in trivia. We had what were the topics? So it's just not me talking through this, but also because I can't remember all of them.
So I know we had, and this is going to be out of order because I don't remember
what
order it was in. There was one that apparently is a standard subtitles. So they would give you a horror movie sequel number, and you would have to say what the subtitle is for it.
Yeah,
I think that was the one we did the worst in. But we still didn't do bad.
That was the one we did the worst in. I think we did 6 or 7. There were 10 questions. We did 6 or 7 out of 10. And some of them too were just like, as soon as they said it, and I'm mad because it was like Warlock 2's subtitle.
We said Apocalypse.
We said Apocalypse, but as soon as he said Warlock 2 out loud, I was like, Armageddon. I could picture the VHS cover. I know what this is. It's like,
or how I thought Curse 2 was the bitten and it was the bite.
Yeah. So there were a few like that one was tough.
But I think we put the farm because I didn't think of that soon enough, and I'm like, I know it takes place on a farm.
What else did they have?
They had Slashix, which I believe we did really well on.
That was the one we did. Was that the one we did the 10 out of 10?
I believe that was our forgotten perfect 10.
Yeah. We had 10 out of 10 on that one.
We got one that was like all the stuff that's on Shudder. Stuff that was on Shudder.
Yes. New Orleans themed one.
Oh, we did go in the New Orleans theme, and there was a New Orleans theme. I think that was it. But
including a question about the Beyond. Oh, and there's also an LGBTQ category as well.
Yeah, I think there's 4. The Slashix, I think, was kind of like the Shuddery one.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. But anyway, we had a lot of fun. We represented because it's always in the virtual one, it's multiple choice, so you have like a 25% chance of getting it right. Here, you're just writing down the answer, so you need to know it, or you're just putting something random down, or you're putting nothing down. So yeah, like I said, I think we averaged 8+ out of 10, and but there were some other great teams as well that we were playing against. So we had a lot of fun. So we did that, and
thanks to Shudder, I got to walk home with a Criterion copy of Hexon. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
which we're presenting a screening of at Overlook. So
we are live screening later tonight, or a week ago.
Yeah.
If you're listening a little later tonight, we'll be hosting it and with a live band. So I'm super excited for that. But yeah, so we got a chance to experience trivia. That was a lot of fun, and then let's talk Clay McLeod Chapman, because
Yes.
he's another like staple of the Overlook Film Festival, and he's someone that I've been talking about for many years, and I tell everybody about him because sometimes the only way to experience him, as we did here, is like you have to be there in person. So some of you may know him from Whisper Down the Lane or The Remaking, which are his recently released horror novels through Quirk Books. He also writes comic books for multiple publishers, including Marvel, where he's been working on kind of like the Spider-Man adjacent, like the symbiote titles like Scream. But he started out with his Pumpkin Pie Show, which is started in New York City, and these are really intense live performances where they're like these like short stories or skits where he delivers these performances where sometimes they go quite horrific, and that's kind of what he was known for originally. And so he did his Pumpkin Pie Show here at Overlook in the past, where he would there'd be an audience and he would do like 4 of these like skits or stories. He's also in the past done these one-on-ones where he'll just perform for you, and those are really intense. And he hasn't performed or read any of his stories since the pandemic started, and his first time back was here at Overlook. And he, instead of splitting it up and, like I said, doing 3 or 4 stories, he read the first, or performed, I should say, the first segment of The Remaking, where he is kind of telling this ghost story, I believe in the 1950s.
Yeah, it took
place.
He's telling in the 50s, and it took place. The things he's describing took place 20 years ago.
Yeah,
early 30s.
And it's as you kind of, I guess it's a classic witch story, right? Regardless of the year, and I guess that's the point of the book too, is that it's it is some women that are doing something that some guys don't like. And, the town talks about them, and eventually, it results in their death. And so, but he takes us through it, and it's super intense. I was super excited to have, Bryan and Derek experience it. What do you guys think?
It was like my expectations were, I'd heard the hype, but it even surpassed that by a million miles. It was so like immersive. It was unlike anything I'd really ever seen. Like, I mean, you like I said, it's a live reading, but it's really like, he's not looking at the book at all. He's memorized like a 15-minute monologue that he's doing, and he's in character as this like completely immersive character who's telling the story around a bonfire. You get the sense that it might be like an alcoholic character. This guy that's recounting what happened 20 years ago. And so he completely becomes another person. And I was not prepared for just how immersive it would be and how hypnotic it would be. And I just did not want it to end. And the cool thing is that I had an open seat next to me, and he like at times would like get right up to that seat and like kind of like lean on it. And so at times, sitting in the front row, you're just like looking right up at him, and as he's like talking over you. And it's such a cool experience. It was really spectacular.
Yeah, it's the level of commitment that it takes to stand up in front of a group of people and tell a story the way he does is just mind-blowing. It's one of those things where the way he's going for it, like it's a high wire act without a net. Because like if you don't fully commit to something like that, it's going to come off as awkward and weird. But he just loses himself in that storytelling mode so well that like I would have, when I was talking to you guys about it, like I would have loved to have seen a shot of the audience, because if they were anything like me, it was going to be just a room full of people just enraptured and just like following, like their heads following him where he's going as he's telling this story. because it was amazing. And it's also like he was selling his books afterwards, and I just immediately picked up both of them because it's going to be such an interesting thing for me to be able to read these things like and hear his voice in my head telling these stories. Yeah, it was amazing. Just the control he has over like the cadence and the vocabulary in his stories is just, I was blown away. And that was, I usually suffer from like high expectations with something like that. And this was one where Jonathan's like, you guys are going to love this. I was like, okay, great. I'm looking forward to it. And it exceeded expectations, even for as much as Jonathan was talking it up. It was amazing. I really enjoyed it. And something like that's one of those fest things that like, it's cool to see the movies, but like these are the kinds of things where it's like, I'm just not going to get that. If even if I were to see like a video or some kind of film version of him doing that, it's not gonna be the same thing. So being able to see that in person was just like, that's the kind of things that really make this event worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely, things like that are definitely what keep us coming back. He has such he has such a physicality, like a subtle physicality to his performance, because there's like the way like, and I know our listeners can't see, but there's a way like where he like curls his arms up together, and you can see where he crouches, like, or like he pulls his shoulders in, and in other cases he like puffs his chest out, and they're like, but it's not like overdone, and it's not, and you don't even like, you don't notice it in a way that stands out, right?
Yeah. It's not like community theater overacting.
Yeah. He just does a subtle way where he kind of like where he morphs into this. Again, it's not a, if you have a chance to check him out, because he's doing a book tour, he does a reading of any of this stuff, check it out, because for people who are expecting a reading, you're not getting a reading, you're getting a performance. He is this character. Mm-hmm. And so that was incredible. I was, any opportunity I have to see him perform, I take up. And if you don't have a chance, like I said, still his books are worth picking up. He has another one coming out called Ghost Eater. So that was cool. And then we did, I'll say it's the most divisive thing we saw and did. And I know I'll laugh ahead of time because Christy's not here. She was meeting up with someone, but actually it would have helped to have Christy here for this one. But we saw from Dream Video Division, aka DVD, Nosferatu with a 2 in it. And there is, and we had talked to some people ahead of time who like they were familiar with the team behind DVD. They were familiar with the previous work they had done. I am not, and none of us are. So when we're talking about this, it's kind of going to be in layman's terms, and so someone else is like, "That's not what it's called." They're like, "This is really," but for us, noobs. But for us, it was brand new. And so this group comes from a collective, which they're editors, they're creators. I know that some people were labeling them as simply editors, but I think in some cases that doesn't, what do you call it? That doesn't give them credit for all the cool things that they really put into this.
It's like digital performance art.
Yeah, right. So they'll recontextualize other movies, and I've heard they've some of these people have done it with things like Mad Max Fury Road, and they've done it with other films. Well, for the Overlook Film Festival, they took the original Nosferatu, which is celebrating its 100th anniversary, and they and the phrasing they used was recontextualized it, but it kind of goes further than that. It's like different creators are taking segments of Nosferatu. It has an intro and outro that's actually like remixed segments from Silent Hill, and it is, all of it's very, very like, there's like, it's hard to explain this. Mm-hmm. There's like, some of it is just like trippy, where it's like, you're on an acid trip or a fever dream, and it's set to music. And so some of it will be very disorienting. There'll be a lot of flashing colors, and they'll have like segments, like I said, of Silent Hill. They're like remix, like the nuns, mm-hmm. and or the nuns, the nurses. There might be nuns in Silent Hill. It's early, but there are the nurses, and so there was a scene where like the nurses are moving, but they're like, but it's also like the screen is flashing, and there's strobes, and there's and there's dubstep music going. So,
and they've edited it to make it look like, it's that thing where they're advancing on the main character, but they've kind of recontextualized it, so they made it look like they're kind of in this dance, like together. So yeah, they do a lot of like distortion, both like visually and audio.
Yeah, and so there was, like I said, there was this intro with maybe it's like 15 minutes or so, which is like Silent Hill and some other things like old, mock old commercials, things like that.
A little bit of a WNUF special flavor.
Yeah, that's a good way to explain it. And then they went into this remixed version of Nosferatu, which is, it is kind of beat for beat still the movie, but it is nothing like the movie you've seen. Again, it's like, like strobes. Like sometimes you'll just watch like a bug on the screen or a bat you'll see flying. It'll be the music, and it'll be pieces of Nosferatu. And towards the end, they have, where Count Orlok is carrying his coffin, but it's to the Monster Mash.
Yeah.
So they played Monster Mash over it, and I can barely explain it.
Well, they did this scene where, was it Canuck, the real estate agent, the stand-in for Renfield?
Oh, yeah.
Scene where, the townspeople are chasing him throughout the village, they started playing, a soft echo of, Beatles, Hard Day's Night in the background.
Yeah.
And started weaving in, Canuck was, the Beatles running away from his legions of fans. That's the kind of thing they're doing here. But then there's some where it's just, they don't necessarily take it to that level. They'll just do this weird acid trip. They'll digitally distort the images and start coloring in all these different colors and waves and things like that, and they'll distort and add different audio to it. So it's different from segment to segment in terms of the approach that the person's taking, which is a very kind of eclectic but also disorienting feeling. And it also, for me, it means that some of these are going to resonate with you more than others.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what helps with it is that this is all attached to a Twitch live stream. So they had a small screen to the right of the main screen, and that was showing the Twitch chat. And so they were showing this in the theater on two screens. They were streaming this live for their Twitch audience. Then there were people in the theaters, and there were people on Twitch who were watching this remotely, and they were chatting throughout. So you can watch this segment, or you can watch people screaming about bugs on the screen, or it got to people talking about Morbius, or people were talking about Wordle. But there's something about this where it's not some people can just watch this and see what they did as a movie. But I think what really worked for me was the element of you're seeing this in the theater, so everything's bigger than life. The music's loud, so it's like you're at a concert to some degree because of these segments come in and out. You have the Twitch piece so that there's this interactivity. People are keeping you laughing or looking back and forth. If you kind of if it want a segment sleepier, you still have the Twitch stream to pay attention to. And of course you can take part in the Twitch stream yourself and comment as Bryan was doing.
And you can make an utter ass out of yourself when people are making, so when we mentioned there was literally this giant mosquito had landed on the screen, which I didn't see, but everybody was kind of riffing off of for the entire movie. And then with 5 to 10 minutes left, I see this bug on the screen, and I'm like, hey, did y'all see there's a bug on the screen? And I think everybody was too nice to just say you're an idiot. They just kind of let it go. But then kind of when I realized what happened, I called myself out on it. So I'm just oh, I'm the asshole who after 90 minutes of people riffing on a bug on the screen goes, oh, look, there's a bug on the screen.
That wasn't a psychedelic hallucination.
Yeah. Old Donnie Detective figured it out.
And this is one of those things that this is not for a lot of people. Some people, left early. Some people left really early. Some people left with 5 to 10 minutes to go because there was an outro, and I was I think we need to wait. I don't think it's over because they did the end credits. And it's still
also
going.
This isn't the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I don't think we're going to see.
It did, and it kept going. It went for about 50. There was an outro which I really liked about it because it introed with Silent Hill and it outroed with Silent Hill. And I think actually, and I was telling Brian and Derek that I think this trippy aspect works best with Silent Hill, because Silent Hill is kind of like that fever dream. You're kind of in a place where things progressively get worse, where you don't know if you're awake or asleep. And so I think that really lends itself well to this, style of, I don't want to necessarily call it recontextualizing, revisualizing, but there's audio, right? Remixing,
Yeah.
But anyway, for this kind of treatment, I think Silent Hill, it was really cool to kind of bookend Nosferatu with that.
It was like it was one of those movies where I felt like high leaving the theater, even though like I was just watching something. It was I felt like my brain had been reprogrammed, and it was so disorienting, but in like a pleasant way. Like it felt like just disengaging and being like floating. I don't even know how it's hard to explain, but it was very, and I think it kind of helped that we went in not really knowing what was going to happen.
No, we had actually I had no idea until I sat down, or until I was in line, and then somebody had mentioned kind of what they do, and I was like, oh, that's helpful.
Yeah, it definitely was a memorable experience, and it took some getting used to, but I think it's kind of one of those things, the more you think about it, when you look back on it, you're like, yeah, it was never boring. Like it was always entertaining, because you didn't know like what direction they were going to go in next. Like some of them were really like somber segments, and others were like, all of a sudden In Excess starts playing.
Oh yeah.
It's such a like great tonal shift that you don't know like if they're going to go for comedy or like just some moments are genuinely like really creepy. So it was such a great mix, and somehow they interwove it in a way where it felt like a movie. So
I think the best one was where it's the scene where like Nosferatu, Count Orlok is looking in on the stand-in for Mina Harker, and they reframed it as like a peeping Tom news story.
Oh, I forgot about that.
They took clips from an actual, like, I think it was like a New York State, like somewhere in like a suburb of New York City, where it was this news story about like this guy who kept like peeping in on this one house. But they superimposed Count Orlok, so like they never used the name of who it was, and they did it pretty seamlessly.
Yeah,
it was pretty funny.
This is the peeping Tom realizing he's been caught, and it just shows him like shift.
You just see Max Schreck in full makeup, just like eyeing into the camera. Yeah.
And they also met. Oh, I think one of the things they added at the very end, which we stayed and saw, was they did the SpongeBob episode where like Nosferatu is the one
they finished. That's how they ended
flicking the lights, the hash slinging slasher. So it's just stuff like that where it's like all different kinds of media just in this big hodgepodge of just psychedelic goodness.
Yeah, it was. Well, I would say, I had a lot of fun with it. If anybody wants to see it, I do believe they put it up on Internet Archive. I remember it's a Dream Video division, so you have to search a little bit for it, but I know they're putting it out there, and Nosferatu's public domain. So, but yeah, so we did that, and then I want to talk a little bit about the immersive game. Every year, the Overlook Film Festival, and then before when that creative team was doing the Stanley Film Festival, they are known for their immersive track and their immersive game, which runs throughout the festival. We had to do it a little bit differently this year because COVID. And so these, in this case, and in past experiences, there were actors who were, like NPCs that you would interact with. And I'm excited to get back to there this year, or next year. But for this year, there was kind of appointment based. They had an escape room company which set up these small events, and we had interactions with people over text. And there is this story and this mystery that unfolds. But I will have Derek. Why don't you talk a little bit about how you got into it, and then we'll kind of let's talk about like day one or pre-day one. What are some of the things that you learned? Like, tell us about the mystery.
Okay, so the mystery, we sign up to the game itself beforehand, and we start getting text messages from someone named Sandy, and she like works in this New Orleans music museum, and she's like investigating this case that happened a while ago where this clarinet player named Ace burst into flames and essentially like spontaneously combusted on stage.
Well, we were supposed to see him.
Yeah, that was supposed to be like that was the show.
Yeah, we were supposed to.
Initially framed as like it's like you're seeing this.
It was one of the programmed events. So on the schedule, So
oh my gosh, that would have been amazing.
Yeah, so we were supposed to see him, and so when they announced the event,
quote.
Right.
They weren't going to burn him on stage for it, but no. So it was supposed to be one of the events, and then like a few days before, then it got canceled, and that's,
Okay.
And like they in one of the emails about like day one or whatever, it says like this event canceled due to spontaneous combustion.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you could text Sandy. I don't know if you did. You happen to text her after the spontaneous combustion? I know Bryan. I think you did.
Yeah, we were doing it pretty early before the event because we had a sense that like this is probably one of the events. So let's start like getting linked into this now. So we were getting like stuff couple weeks beforehand.
Yeah, it was like, oh, Sandy, like I had heard Ace like spontaneously combusted. Like, what happened? Like, is everything okay?
Sandy probably thought I was a jerk because I just was like, that's too bad, and never really replied. Like, it happens, I guess.
Well, I guess that frees up my evening. I don't know.
So I can go see that other movie. But yeah, so we had been texting and everything before we even got to New Orleans. And luckily, we were able to do it as a group. So the three of us and Christy were able to basically, like, we had these meetings set up throughout the week. And it kind of started off on Friday where we were supposed to go meet Sandy because she's like going down the rabbit hole of what happened to Ace and why he spontaneously combusted, and started to kind of realize that there was probably some demonic forces at play, and she wanted us to look into that for her. But every time we would meet up with her, there would be a note there, and it was like, I had to leave, I just missed you, but here, could you like go check the archive room for these items? And so there would be like, it's really cool because it was like in the festival area in the mall, but then also at locations throughout the city. So it allowed us to kind of explore the city a little bit and walk around. And it really was genuinely creepy at times. I know we were looking in the archive room, which was like basically like the Warrens' haunted museum, just in the mall. And there's like this creepy record playing with like the devil talking on it. And then all of a sudden we hear this like bump on the wall behind us. And it was like, we never found out like why that happened or who that was, but just moments like that just really were cool. But it was a good lead in to the immersive event. I know a little different than years past from what I've heard.
Yeah, but I think every year changes, and so some years, it's more scavenger hunt. Some years it's more role play. In this case, some years it's more like escape room element. So every year you don't know what you're going to get, which is part of the fun.
And that's really cool because we really like, I think all of us really like escape rooms, and I know my sister and brother-in-law, we do those and we really enjoy it. And even like we like to do like geocaching and stuff like that. So this felt kind of similar to that, where you're going around like in areas looking for hidden things, and people could walk by and be like, well, what are they doing? And I just love that kind of stuff. But it was really interesting. So every day we kind of had a new mission to go and investigate somewhere, and we were able to kind of do that in between screenings and other events that we wanted to take part in. So it was so much flexibility, and it was just really cool to go explore. And then we ended up going to like the actual music museum over the weekend and encountered some other spookiness there. Got to see the what we thought was the haunted clarinet, and then ended up kind of taking a detour there, but and another very spooky smack against the wall. Yeah, but I think only me and Christy were in the room for that one, and it was that one. I
still heard it.
That one truly, like really freaked me out. But it's amazing the level of detail though, because you're like looking through like a fake security officer's office. And like they have the scrapbook and like all these personal effects in there. So it's amazing the amount of time that they go in to like creating these like fake environments that seem very real.
You also got to appreciate the level of, because like there's people like, the elves are behind, like just behind the corner or just around the corner, like making sure things are where they need to be.
Yeah.
But they're really good at you not seeing them.
Yeah.
So you're just like, they're keeping you immersed in it. They're doing this because that's the only way it could be happening. That there are people like just staying like just out of sight and doing stuff. Or, it's, the work of the devil. But yeah, I really appreciate like the stuff that the mad scramble that has to be going on in order to make this as seamless as possible for us. And I also, like you were saying, like the archive room, I was talking to you guys about this yesterday. I loved growing up. I loved haunted hay rides. I loved like haunts, like haunted barns and things like that. There were a lot where I grew up in Pennsylvania. And this was a really cool way to scratch that itch in a way where, like I was saying, like I'm 38 years old. I can't go to a haunted hayride like just by myself and check it out because I'm like surrounded by a bunch of tweens, like, just this hulking mass of a man like sitting at a hayride, like, hey kids, you having fun? This is great. Yeah, but like,
come to Minnesota, we'll do it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, we'll be at least 2 adults together. It'll be a little less creepy that way. But it was a way to kind of like scratch that itch with like seeing the creativity of like building a set and like building an atmosphere. Like that archive room was so cool. The way they set up the prop for like the recording with the devil so that it played automatically when you open up the suitcase. Like,
that was a nice touch.
It was like, I got those chills that like were reminiscent of being a kid walking through those different haunted rides and things like that. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. And you never really could tell, like, you always knew you were being watched, but you couldn't really tell. Sometimes you could guess, but you're like, I don't know, am I being paranoid though that person's really watching me, or are they really just on their computer?
Which added to the creepy factor too. It was just like that feeling of like their eyes on me. And it's just like, I don't know which one. I've got an idea, but I don't know for sure.
Let me check your phone. Just running around.
Yeah. Hey, you, come here.
Yeah, it totally feels like, I hope that this kind of stuff becomes more popular just in general, because I feel like there's a lot of people out there of all ages who would love to play like immersive games like this. Like if you could, it's like taking an escape room, but then stretching it out across the entire city or like multiple days. Like I could just see this being like a really cool thing. If you were in a city for a weekend, just like, hey, I want to do this while I'm here, and then just go.
It's a cool way to do, like, it's a cool way to frame a walking tour. Like
for sure.
This immersive thing.
Yeah, and I think in a past year too, that's kind of what they did, where it's like a bit of a scavenger hunt. So, I'm curious to see where they take it. I think they made some interesting changes this year, and I think once things open up more and they kind of combine both, I'm curious to see what happens. I always like when they have actors as characters they get to interact with, and at the parties too, trying to get hints at parties. And so I'll be interested to see when they bring that back. But yeah, this was a lot of fun, and I'm glad we got to all do it together. And the two of you got to experience so much of this for the first time, because I know that I just keep talking about it every year. So anybody that we can get to go is for a first time especially is great.
Yeah, now we know that you just saying that wasn't part of your own immersive game that you're putting us through like it is.
Maybe I am. I'm recruiting you. Yeah.
It's a long game.
Yeah, it is a long game.
A 10-year game. And I think ours seemed like a closed book when we finished the immersive experience. We got to do like a little choose your own adventure kind of ending where we chose, like, do we want to go with the forces of darkness and evil, or do we want to like try and fight it?
Which, by the way, the devil had inhabited a cat.
Yeah. Which, it was so perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, and speaking of cats, because I was almost ready to wrap up, but I forgot we did something else that I didn't put on. That we've been so busy this weekend. It was a 30th anniversary, right? 30 years since Sleepwalkers was released. So there was a 30th anniversary screening with Mick Garris in attendance, and they did a recording of the King cast, which you'll probably be able to hear probably around the time we release this as well. And I think, I haven't seen it in a while. I have never seen it on the big screen. I had seen it on VHS first, so I think it was cool to see it on the big screen. Still holds up really well. Derek, I think for you, it was the first time, right?
Yes. First time, and wow, I will never be the same. I'd heard it was out there, but it was even beyond what I expected. And especially knowing that Stephen King wrote the screenplay, and you had mentioned, Bryan, it's not based on any pre-existing short story. It's just like, here, King wrote this screenplay, and Mick Garris, who he collaborated or still collaborates with a lot, directed it, and it's such a fun movie. It takes some like really hard left turns that I didn't see coming, but it's definitely never boring. There's always it feels like halfway through the movie it turns into another movie, and it's like the climax just goes on for like 45 minutes. There's this really kind of crucial turning point, but it's an interesting like mythology too, and like a type of character or like horror movie creature that has its own like set of rules. And there's these cats, like stray cats that follow this mother and son who have moved to a small town, and you can tell that they are up to something evil, but you're not really sure what exactly. But all these they're scared of these cats that are following them. And then Madchen Amick plays the main character of the movie. And, I remember watching her in Twin Peaks, and she plays Betty Cooper's mom on Riverdale. So it was really cool to see her.
I knew you'd get Riverdale into this podcast. I knew it.
I'm sure they need to do a Sleepwalkers episode after this, because they always do like parodies of horror movies in that show. So I would love to see her get to do something with this. But the effects in it are really interesting, the practical effects, and they do some really interesting like distortion with like the visual effects. And yeah, there's just so much going on in this movie. There might be a little too much going on in this movie, but I like it, and I think it's awesome that the first time I saw it, I got to see it with Mick Garris in the room, who's like definitely one of my horror heroes from all the wonderful work he's done. So that was a treat.
I was sitting next to Derek during that, and I remember during the scene where you get introduced to Charles and Mother, like they introduced them the romantic angle first, so they're dancing and they're getting like very close and breathy, and I'm just watching Derek's face for the scene where, like, for the part where he first refers to her as mother, to see like that's what they're setting up. Just seeing like the okay.
Yeah, like, okay, so this is very incestuous right off the bat.
Yeah.
Like we're taking Psycho, but we're just not hiding it. We're going for it right now.
Yeah, the undertones are just tones.
Yeah, nothing subtle about it.
Yeah, I do like with this movie how much backstory that there is, which they don't give you in excessive detail, but there's kind of like a lot of like mythology that's kind of built up around this that they kind of just touch upon quickly. Like we do see the Egyptian angle. We do know that we do know that the cats are following them. We do know that they're like that they've been like on the run for a while. We do know that there are other sleepwalkers. They're just these like little tidbits that they pepper through the movie, which I think make it a lot more interesting because it is like you just jumped into like the end of their life, but they've had this very interesting and for their victims terrible life, that could go back, and we don't know how old they are, right? So we don't know how long they've been doing this, even though her son appears to be, high school age. It doesn't seem like that's the case.
Yeah, because they have like you see, like, and it's a good point that like they give you these like little breadcrumbs, but it's not super like exposition dump heavy.
Yeah.
But like in the opening credits, it's like you see like these what look like Egyptian era artifacts and stuff like that. So you get the sense they've been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And also shout out to the cold open, like where you kind of see like the after effects of their last kind of adventure or whatever, featuring Mark Hamill.
Oh my god!
Just doing a very quick bit part, but like as Hamill does, like committing to it. Just it's like very good at like setting you up for like this is the kind of thing you're in for.
Yeah, and it's you wonder like if the movie, it feels like it could have been like the Howling franchise where we could have just had like 8 Sleepwalkers movies because there is so much
just like going building to other Sleepwalkers,
right? Yeah, I mean, you wonder like if they ever had that in mind, or like they could have done like a prequel comic book series, or it just feels like the world is so much bigger than what they're exploring. So I do wonder like if King ever like had ideas for further exploration of that, or maybe it's just that's the sign of a good story when you can tell that it feels like there's a world around it. But that and then just. It's funny how it goes between being really like vicious, but also very campy, and there's some really interesting kills and epic one-liners and things like that. So yeah, it's just it was a very memorable experience. So I'm really glad. I love how when a festival brings a movie like this back, so you see new stuff but also anniversary screenings with the filmmaker in attendance.
Yeah, you can't beat that. Yeah. And, and we have a day of films coming up, I think, and I actually don't know all of the ones we're going to pick, but I do know the one that we're heading to after we see this, which is Deadstream. And I'm super excited for that. I've heard lots of great things about it, but I know Brian's already seen it, so he can tell us a little bit about what we're getting into.
So, and like, there's a little bit of like cool thing that happened at the fest. Like, so one of the interesting things that happened is like you're getting all these people together that are like in the horror circles, including like the filmmakers. And so we're at the closing party last night, and we see this woman there in this really awesome Ellen Ripley costume where she's got like this face hugger, she's got the full jumpsuit and everything. And we go over just talk to her about that. And then over the course of the conversation, we find out that she is the co-director, Vanessa Winter, from Deadstream. And I'm like, oh my God, I love your movie, because this was so good. I got to see it when I was helping program some other stuff last year. And it is about this kind of disgraced YouTube, like very obnoxious guy who is like, he's made a career out of putting himself into like really uncomfortable positions. And like, he's like a scaredy cat, but he like, because I'm a scaredy cat, I'm going to like jump, skydive nude or something like that. But like, you get the sense, like you get hints that there was this incident with a homeless person. Like, it's kind of like he's kind of like a pastiche on like Logan Paul or something like that, where it's like, he'd done videos where it's like, dude, that is so in poor taste. So you're immediately introduced to him as like, he is a very unlikable character. And so the entire movie is him kind of going to this haunted house and putting up all of these cameras. And basically, like, this is supposed to be his big comeback, because he issued his very phony like apology video. He let the quote unquote appropriate amount of time go by. And like, this is supposed to be his like coming out party. And so, he has decided he's going to, he just sets up all these cameras, and he's doing this live stream of being in this haunted house, where he like sets up situations where he's trying to get like to a certain amount of views. And he's like, if I hear a sound, or if like there's something that I'm particularly scared of, I promise you, I guarantee I will go and see it. So obviously things go awry in just like the funniest of ways. This is such a funny movie, but it's also got some genuine like creeps and thrills in it. And because like, it's a tightrope where if you're going to have an unlikable character, you need to find ways of like, why do we want to keep following him? And in this case, it's like, let's see all the horrible shit that can happen to him over the course of a night. It's very slapsticky, or like, what is it? Splatter stick or something like that. I forget what it's called. But it's, kind of like, in the vein of like Evil Dead, that kind of thing. Yeah, and it was hilarious, and I think it's coming out in the near future. I think it's getting like a wider release.
They're doing a Shudder release.
Yeah, they're doing a Shudder release. So highly recommend checking this one out. I'm excited that you all are going to catch it today, or you will have seen it by the time this comes out. Yeah. I hope you have as much fun with it as I did.
Yeah, I can't wait. Yeah, we're really excited for that one. And yeah, it was funny running into the director. There was a Halloween party, a costume party, and I went as a Victorian vampire. I had a little frilly shirt and Victorian pants and a jacket, and my hair, it's Victorian looking anyway. So I was good there. And then Derek, what did you go to for the Halloween party?
So I went as, you could look at it as either like a zombie prom king or a zombie groomsman, because it's this white tuxedo that a few years ago, me and my sister and brother-in-law put like a bunch of fake blood splatter on there, because I got to host a 10th anniversary screening for Greg Bishop and Joe Ballerini's Dance of the Dead. So that was a lot of fun. And so ever since then, I've had this really cool, like, blood splattered tuxedo. And I'm like, it's not every day that you get to like take that out and wear it. And so I put that on, and then tried to do my best zombie makeup on my face, which took a little trial and error. I was like texting my sister like for makeup tips and things like that. But yeah, so I got to do that, and yeah, it was fun. It was fun. It was on the ride over there, I kind of put the suit like in my arms because I didn't want my driver to just keep driving by when he saw me standing on the sidewalk.
That's funny.
But on the way back, I just kind of wore the tuxedo and like the makeup and everything. I just walked down like the 9-minute walk back home and got some interesting looks. Actually had one Lyft driver like out of his window be like, "What happened, man?" And he was like, I went over there and he's like, "Oh, that's amazing." And he was like fist bumping me. And so people like had like, I think people actually thought that like something horrible had happened.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to like freak them out, but and of course it's June. So I'm like, well, it's all right. I just came from like a Halloween party, and they're like, "Oh, that's really cool." But at first I thought like
you had been almost killed.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Or killed somebody.
Yes.
It was very out of context because no one else is walking around in costumes.
Yeah.
Halloween is months away.
Yeah.
Right. So that was cool. That was cool. And I finally made it. I was like the last one to the party, but I finally made it, and it was awesome because Bryan, you also were a zombie.
Yeah, I kind of went for like a zombro feel. So it was just like, I was just wearing kind of like, khaki shorts and a t-shirt and a bunch of like Mardi Gras beads. Basically, I'll be honest, I just didn't want to wear something that was going to be like long pants and super uncomfortable because I'm a big guy and it's, again, bajillion degrees and even higher humidity. So like I wanted to be comfortable. So I just kind of went with like, shorts, t-shirt, beads, and then just some zombie makeup, just to, which I'm pretty sure I'm going to have like green in my beard from like the zombie ooze for the next few days. But no, it was a lot of fun. It was a blast. The band, they had like this like surfer rock, like Halloween rockabilly surfer rock thing.
Yeah, they were great.
It was a really good vibe for the party.
It kind of felt like a music act that would have been like in a Rob Zombie movie, like in a scene, in Halloween 2 or something like that, where it's just like, the perfect kind of music, and they were like mixing songs together a little bit, and it was they were really, really good.
Then they had like burlesque performances in between. Like you had this one person who was doing like, she had like these metal like components to her costume, and she brought out like this power sander. It was just like shooting sparks off of her attire. It was so cool.
Oh, I totally missed that. See, I was too fashionably late. I should have been like a little less fashionably late, and I would have actually saw some of that stuff. But at least I made it in time to get there before it ended.
Yeah, no, we all had a good time. But before we wrap, I did want to get kind of final thoughts on what you guys thought about the fest. So Derek, we'll start with you.
It was truly a treat in every imaginable way. I think it takes some getting used to, just because like we're all kind of emerging into this new world of like, how do we, with COVID, how do you handle things? And just the fact that they really took that seriously just allowed us to kind of, ease into things a little bit and see some people that we either haven't seen before or haven't seen in a long time. But I can't say enough good things about I've heard amazing things for years about the Overlook team, but to experience it firsthand, and then just to hang out with all of you and meet Bryan in person for the first time, and see Jonathan and Christy for the first time in 4 years. It's like, I'm starting to feel like I'm maybe not out of the Twilight Zone, but I'm like coming out of the Twilight Zone a little bit more. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is really cool. But it was, I would have come here anyway just to hang out with you guys. So this was like icing on the cake.
Yeah, I could not have asked for a better weekend. Just the fact that I got to share that with all of you was just an absolute pleasure. It's kind of one of those things where obviously we've been talking virtually, we've been doing a lot of Zoom stuff. So it was kind of nice that it didn't feel like there was didn't have to be that feeling each other out thing in terms of like, yes, this was the first time we were meeting, but it was just the first time we were meeting like in the flesh. Like we know each other's cadences, we know each other's personalities and, personality quirks and all that good stuff. So it was something where we kind of got to hit the ground running. And I feel like we did that, and we just kind of got to wring as much as we could out of this weekend. And it was an absolute blast, and I loved it.
Brian and I were talking about how weird it would be if we weren't like we were during the podcast or Zoom. If we were like just putting on airs during the podcast. We're completely different people. So we met in person, it's like, you're not the person I was expecting.
Like, what if I was like an utter dude bro? It was just like, hey man, I gotta get out of here by like 3:00 because like the Saints game is on. Is that cool? We'll just hang out on Bourbon Street the whole weekend. I want to see some boobs. Yeah, that would have been a weird left turn. Yeah, but no, it was like, I think, you know, the rapport that we've kind of built over the however many years, it just kind of carried over into being with each other in person. So it felt super comfortable. It was nice because, you know, this is a festival too where we're not, you know, in some festivals, and that's fine. You know, you'll see new movie after new movie after new movie, and your days are packed with that. And I'd say our movie schedule, as you heard us talking about it, our movie schedule is pretty light. It was like you'd see a movie or two throughout the day, and then you'd go, you know, do an immersive event. You'd grab some lunch or grab some drinks. We'd grab dinner. And I think, you know, the fun thing, you know, and other people have, and I have in the past, kind of likened this to summer camp for horror fans. And I really think that's what it is. You know, you get to meet make new friends. You get to catch up with friends that you've known for a while. In some cases, meet it for the first time in person. And so, yeah, this has been really special. It always is, more so because I get to hang out with the two of you, and because we got to do this. But yeah, we could have gone 2 hours with this episode, but we figured we'll keep it nice and tight around. Plus, Jonathan's got to get Deadstream.
I have to go see Deadstream. Yeah. You outed me. That's also a big part of it. I want to see Deadstream. But with that, this episode comes to a close. We want to thank Bryan, our engineer, for helping us out each and every episode. Thank you, Bryan, for all your help. He doesn't just, you know, edit and add the intros and closings and cut things out. He also will level our voices in case this episode's probably going to need it, because we're all around a microphone here. So thank you. And as always, it's super, super important. We are super thankful for our listeners, our readers, our Corpse Club members. We couldn't do this without you. And, you know, we love what we do. We hope you do too. And then, you know, when it comes to events and things like that, you know, if you're going to a future Overlook, let us know. We're always happy to meet up. If it's another event we're going to, you know, we met some friends here who are familiar with Daily Dead, or we met new people who didn't know what Daily Dead was. And we're like, follow us on Instagram. We'll stay in touch. Next Overlook, we'll team up. That's always an option. You can go to corpseclub.com. You can check out all of our episodes. We crossed the 250 line. So if you're just listening to Corpse Club, we have a lot of episodes you can catch up on. I highly recommend our Halloween Hangover episodes. I highly recommend the Pick 2.
If you want to hear some like lifelong feuds budding, check out our Pick Between Two. I forget exactly what it's called.
We need to do that again.
We do. We always say we do, but we need Christy. That's the key. I don't want to do it without her, so we do have to get her back. And then a couple other things. Don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. If you haven't, it helps. Give us more visibility, more listeners, means we can keep doing this. And if you want to listen to Corpse Club beyond what you're listening to it now, because if you're hearing me, you're listening to it. But we're also on YouTube. We're on SoundCloud. We're on Spotify. We're on Amazon. If you want to get in touch, you can reach out anytime. We're at contact@corpseclub.com. We're on Twitter at Daily Dead News, at Corpse Club. On Instagram and Facebook, we are under Corpse Club as well. Thanks again for listening. And until next time, stay scary.